Welcome to Cash Talk, the podcast where we delve into the depths of finance, business, and life itself. I'm your host, John Cachia, a multi-award-winning wealth advisor with a passion for empowering ambitious Australians to confidently achieve financial freedom. Hey everyone, before we get started, this is a quick reminder that everything in this podcast is of a general nature and nothing has been tailored to your personal circumstances. So please seek personal financial advice before acting on this information. Hello and welcome back to Cash Talk. And today I'm joined by Mason. Mason, how are you, mate?
I'm good, mate. Yourself?
Not bad. I've been, to be honest with you, for the last 6 weeks, kind of just flying all over the country, speaking after winning the Advisor of the Year last year and going and speaking to other advisors about, why Thriving Wealth is, the elite practice in regards to what we specifically do for our kind of niche clientele, and speaking to them about just, with that way that we deliver advice, but also around how the business has been able to kind of grow and sustain that growth. So it was really humbling to be able to kind of like speak to my peers, and it was really well received, which was lovely. But in between as well too, I went to the S&P indexing masterclass where I was sitting on stage actually, and I was quite humbled with pretty much the head of Vanguard, Bell Potter, South Wealth, and Evans and Partners. And so being on the stage with like the likes of some of those people that, it was probably only maybe like 8 or 9 years ago where I was just like wowed by these people. To be sharing the stage was really kind of humbling, but all on that, glad to be home, to be honest with you, and get back to a bit of normal routine. So.
Well, that sounds good. I mean, the flying does take it out of you a little bit. It's a taxing thing. Even though you're just sitting in a plane, it is taxing. So it'd be nice to just sort of get home and just a bit of normalcy. Yeah,
and then, you've got the prep work, you've got budgets, which we want to talk about today, and, you've got still everything that's going on in the world. It's about how does that actually look, yeah? So while I was away, there was obviously the budget, which came up, and there was a lot of chit-chat in between, and obviously in the background listening to kind of Chalmers, but also there's obviously still a lot of things going on as well too in the world, Trump and this, that. So, really, busy period on the lead up to a normal budget, but also there's a lot of kind of geopolitical things going on. But, today, Mason, we wanted to obviously speak about the budget because now not only has Jim Chalmers come out, but Pete Dutton and his team have come out as well too and said like this is what the major other party is going to do. So, I've put some of the things down that we might want to go through and just quickly discuss. It was a bit of an interesting budget, which it was a little bit like a nothing budget in regards to myself, because some of the changes were what I can say a little bit of not really an effect, which I would have liked to see. But we'll get to the tax changes because that's the one that pretty much they've gone out to kind of affect everyone. And really, they've come in to say that there's going to be some tax cuts for the bracket between the $18,200 to the $45,000 bracket from July 2026. So first and foremost, we need to be aware that, this is still a while away until these tax cuts happen. And we're dropping by about 1%. So from 16% down to 15%, and then in 2027 down to 14%. So, if we just remember, there was stage 3 tax cuts that were previously supposed to be implemented. They were watered down. So, Mason, what's your thoughts in regards to that move from the government?
Yeah, it seems to be very much a cost of living type of tax cut, trying to impact everyone, trying to help everyone out, but quite vanilla in that. But what I find interesting is that 15% level, because obviously that matches superannuation. So that plays a big role with advice and our strategies and how we look to do things with clients. So I think that's probably the biggest thing I took away from that 15% level, because I think that's going to be quite interesting when it comes to superannuation strategies moving forward. Yeah, definitely. And I think just to put some kind of numbers around these things, so the annual tax saving in the 2026-27 financial year for a taxable income of, say, $45,000 or more is about $268. Now, the thing is that I took away, as much as they're good to have tax cuts and we want more money actually in the hands of the citizens, is
cost of living's now problems. You know, $268 in July next year when we're in March. Couldn't we have implemented something like now? Yeah, or even, you know. So that was my kind of take on it. Like this, you've come out with this cost of living tax scheme. Yeah, I would have liked to see that implemented much sooner. But like you said, everyone gets it. Means more money in the pockets. What are we going to be doing with that as well too? But the other one as well too was around the HEX debts. So a 20% reduction on all existing student debts will apply from 1st of June 2025. Interesting, Mason. That one. What's your thoughts on that one? And yeah.
I think this will be extremely popular with the younger voters, particularly, and including myself, who has a HEX debt. I think it's quite an attractive incentive and quite a nice reward. But I think a lot of people might be put out a little bit with maybe you've just paid off your student debt and it's like, oh, I've missed out on this 20% reduction. So I think it might put out a few people, but overall, I think most people will really, really like that one. It'd be a very, very popular vote pool.
Yeah, which is also interesting because technically that means that obviously these people, which potentially might be in their careers like you have for quite some time, they're also going to get some more income in the pocket. And so very, like, obviously quite good, helps them kind of get ahead. It does help with actually cost of living, but both the one previously and the one now also go against the inflation. Yeah, so it's an inflationary policies, both of them. So that's a very interesting one. The other one was around the instant asset write-off for businesses as well too, which is looking like it's going to end the $20,000 instant asset write-off from 30 June 2025. So that was actually interesting because if anything, especially in these times where the economy is showing signs of potential weaknesses, you want to really be incentivizing the small business. So I really took that one, Mason, as a interesting one, why they've not chosen to extend it, and when they're obviously going on the other sides. And I can see that they're obviously focusing on the people who are likely going to spend the money the most. But it's actually the small businesses who are actually backing the taxpayers and actually going to employ more. So that's an interesting one.
Do you think, I was just thinking when you were saying that, do you think they're potentially looking to end that at that point in time, to put a deadline on it to incentivize small businesses to potentially bring forward any purchases they were thinking for years down the line? Do you think that could be their aim there?
It could be. However, I think the $20,000, Mason, is probably not enough either. Yeah. And I would have liked to see some more incentives for small business. I think that it's small business that doesn't have the they're taking the risk. Where's the kind of backing from the government for stability? So, but I do understand there's also a big elephant in the room, which we might speak about around, where's this debt, all this debt going to be sorted out as well too. But superannuation, no changes really.
No.
Okay, which in a way is good for us. Like, we don't want to see changes happen over the time. We don't want to see goalposts moving. So we get some stability in regards to certain things. So the Division 296 tax, 15% tax on earnings over 3 mil is still expected to start the 1st of July 2025. So I've spoken about this, don't like it at all. Yeah. Have you changed your view, Mason, or you still don't like this one?
I think the more I hear about it, the more I dislike it. To be perfectly honest, it just doesn't make sense to me, really. So I was hoping they might move it on and just not do it, but it looks like they're going to continue on. It's like it's very much down the pathway now.
And I can't see the other party getting rid of it. No. Just too much of a money spinner. Anyway, this is what I talk about, them kicking down the can down the road. You know, there's a small percentage that do fall into that bucket, but, I've done 2 modelings for 2 clients today, and both of them look like they're going to get into that bracket, So, anyway. 1st of July, transfer balance cap. That moves up with the indexing. So that 1.9 mil figure goes to 2 mil. Mason, just to remind people what the transfer balance cap is.
Yeah, so the transfer balance cap is really, really important, particularly when we're getting close to retirement, because that's that balance that we can move towards the allocated pension and basically tax-free earnings and drawings in retirement. So having that $2 million is going to be really valuable for those at that point. And if you're getting close, that's quite nice to get that little bump up there.
And so, Mason, let's say I move which is going to be 2 million, and I move my 2 million from super to pension, and then I withdraw 100, and then I put it back in, do they go ba-bow, or what happens there?
Yeah, so it's not quite that simple.
Okay.
You can't try to rort the system. So the transfer balance cap is recorded, of course, and if you're pulling it out, it's still that's still your cap there. So you can't just recycle money to try to get extra tax relief. Unfortunately, it would be a pretty nice strategy if you could.
But you can did that if it's the same allocated money and it goes out and back in, that's still recorded within that balance. So it's very important to understand that these rules are very what's the word, Mason? Very lost my train of thought. You need to be very careful, in the way that you work with these transfer balance caps and other caps as well too when it comes to superannuation. Concessional contributions going to be staying the same, so $30,000 for concessionals and for non-concessionals at $120,000. We do have bring forward on non-concessionals, so the 120 is 360, and you can use up to 3 years worth of future non-concessional contributions in 1 year. But make sure you don't go over these caps. But also super guarantee. This has been moving, so these are your employer contributions. Come 1st of July, it's now hit that 12%. Yeah. Mason, that's a very good number. Like if you think about it, like take Australia aside and you're looking at the world, like being able to have forced savings at 12%, you can understand how the country has been really looked after from some of the previous governments, and we're talking 20 plus years ago now, to implement, or even 30 years ago now, really, superannuation. It's a really good vehicle, isn't it?
It's fantastic. It has been a slow burn to get there because obviously it started at around that 3% level, and it's slowly gotten to this 12% level, which is fantastic. And I think from memory, the magic number is around 15% because that's the number where it's like if you can put this away for your whole working life, you'll be absolutely fine. So we're almost forcing Australians to be self-funded in retirement, which is the ultimate goal. And I think the government will be very happy to have a lot more self-funded retirees that lessen that age pension burden.
Yeah, definitely. So Mason, what are we talking about in regards to like investments now? Like how does that impact the investment landscape?
Yeah, it was an interesting budget for the investment landscape because there was no changes to capital gains tax, negative gearing, or franking credits. So that's all positive news for shares and property investors. I think it would have been very brave to introduce a change there with the election coming up. I think Labor learnt from last time when they were talking about changing the franking credit space. Yeah,
that's pretty much got rid of Bill Shorten in one move. Yeah.
I think making any changes, they're significant change because that impacts so many people in such a profound way. You're not going to be popular. So that didn't surprise me. So with that in mind, I don't think the budget is really likely to move the markets that much. I think we're still looking at those major factors like interest rates, inflation, and more global factors with US tariffs and these types of factors impacting the markets rather than the budget itself. Would you agree with that?
I do agree with it. Look, because of those non-events in regards to franking credits and stuff like that, you've really got the major impact of this Division 296 on those bigger balances. So that's probably the one. That's probably the biggest impact. However, what's kind of interesting about all of this is that the wealthy know how to wriggle out of these things. So we're going to see what that actually tax does in regards to revenues for the government. But that, once again, I don't believe has significant effect on markets. Yeah. And so locally, the state governments continue to push ahead with a lot of taxes on property. That's holding Victoria down, let alone other states as well too. So we got a lot of things that potentially could have been good, which we'll speak about in regards to their home scenario, what they're looking to do with the homes. But Mason, I do agree. I think that when you look at it holistically and globally, I think we make up about 2% of the world economy. And so when America's making up 50-60% of the world's economy, whatever they say just ricochets across the world. And I remember going to New York and standing in front of the bull, which we all know about. And I remember sitting there and just like, this is the heartbeat of the financial world. And it literally is. Yeah, you can feel what happens in the US just ricochets across the world. So that is, I think, by far the biggest one. How this government interacts with the US, especially in regards to the tariff agreements and stuff like that, I think is going to have more of a bearing on markets. So my eyes are very much on that. My eyes are also on some of the agreements in regards to what Australia is going to be doing in their alliances, especially with things like China. China's got tariffs. Well, what does that mean to Australia? Also, the potential de-escalation of the Ukraine and the Russian war. Obviously, I want to happen. I want peace in this world. I'm very much pro-humanitarian in regards to, we cannot have wars. So many atrocities are happening. Economically speaking, Australia has been a great recipient from the Ukraine war. And so when that stops, what does that mean for our resources? You've got tariffs on China. You've also got resources slowing down because of Ukraine. What does that mean for Australia? And so the government really, really needs to think about how they're going to economically grow this country, which has been on the back of mining and construction. Where's our next wave? Yeah, and so that's why I'd like to see a lot more in the business space. Yeah, I want to see a lot more in regards to helping businesses flourish, because it's the businesses, and even if you look in the US around their economy is based on innovation. It's based on the businesses growing, and even if you look at all economies around the world, it's the business private sector that really boosts things. And if it wasn't for this great system called superannuation, we wouldn't be in a good place economically. Like, it's really pushing a lot of this stuff, because these super funds have 12% of everyone's money going into these funds, and they need to allocate, So it's going to be, just interesting times, but there are some of the things that I want to see when it comes to investments.
Yeah, I think that touches on my next point here, John, I have with rising long-term deficits could bring future tax pressure. So we've got these tax that's coming through, but I feel like that's short-term, but there's going to be a bit of long-term pain. There's still a lot of recovery, and we talked about Victoria, land tax and things. These measures are going to come into place, aren't they, where long-term they need to make this money somewhere. So it's sort of, as you say, kicking the can down the road a little bit before we...
Yeah, and what you need to see is the country needs to be thriving again, yeah? And listen, I'm not going to sit here and say Trump's tariffs are good. I'm not going to sit here and tell you Trump's tariffs are bad. Economic textbook says that tariffs are bad, not good, yeah, because you want to get more trade happening. However, when you look at Australia, how are they going to solve the revenue issue? Because you've got a third of the population that's going to retire, okay? So you've got less workers, so that means you need to bring in immigration. When you're bringing in immigration, what are you bringing? So we need businesses staying here. We need the people like Canva staying here. We need people who make the money to not go, I'm going to get taxed half of my money, then I'm going to get all of these tax. We need the smartest minds to stay here. And so what Trump is trying to do, like I said, is to bring and maintain all manufacturing, all the talent back in America. Is that going to work out? Let's see how we go. Yeah, but in Australia, what are we going to do? Because the top talent is going, hey, listen, I'm earning $1 million. I'm getting taxed $470,000 on my money. Plus, after the money that I've got left over, the $530, then I've got GST, this, that, stamp duty, blah, 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 blah. Like, what am I left with? And when they're like, okay, well, I can go to Dubai, I can go to Singapore, I can go to, like, whatever these countries are and get paid less, get taxed less for my money, we're having the drainage of this top talent. And so that can be retained on these shores. And no one is going to wants to get paid less, okay? But if the economy is not going well, we're actually becoming cheaper due to things like currency and stuff like that. So we need to be pumping we need to have an economy flourishing to maintain a good standard of living. How that is going to happen, I think their plan, which I've already seen play out a little bit, is immigration. One thing that Australia has that no one has in the world is we have an endless line for people to come to live with us, live here, yeah, to essentially live with us. And so the issue you have with that is skilled labour. So like you even look in our profession, they're now going to foreigners to bring financial advisors from foreign countries over here to supply the shortage of financial advisors around the country. That's just us. Take that across the board. What does that do? That brings in the talent to Australia, but it also brings in taxpayers' dollars. And so we do have a country that is quite large. We do have a lot of land mass. We have a lot of whatever. I was in heaps of Ubers. Uber driver by day, Uber driver by night, bricklayer by day. And so you've got this immigration coming in that's now trying to fill these skilling, but they're also, the government's getting revenues from this. So I know this is crazy. I think, what do we got? 26, 28 million or something like that, people? Like, do we need a country with 60 mil? Do we need it? Like, and Mason, I don't see another way.
Well, it's going to bring a lot of jobs and infrastructure. We need the infrastructure, don't we, to support double the population. Considering most of our population lives in 2 cities, that's quite interesting. I wonder how that'll play out.
How that plays out, do you know what I mean? Because it's the revenues in the door when you've got more taxpayers that... So it's a supply and demand thing, yeah? And then the more supply you've got, which is labour, don't forget about AI for now, let's just talk normal labour, you're then bringing prices down. So the immigration policy, let's see how that plays out.
Interesting, but on another note, family support. So obviously the budget's always a good time for families to see if they're going to get any additional support, which they did, which is fantastic. So from the 1st of January 2026, a 3-day minimum of subsidised childcare will apply. Families eligible for the childcare subsidy, even with low activity hours. So I guess this is aimed at helping parents with part-time or casual work return to the workforce more easily, which I think is a great thing.
And it's probably a segue of just what I've talked about, Mason, around just them wanting to have more people in the workforce. You know, and people are being forced that both husband and wife and partners have to go back to work. And so that's a clear same one as what I was just talking about. Great win. But yeah, I think that economically speaking, that's what's going to happen. But I think that's a good one.
Yes, I think it's a nice relief for new parents and existing parents as well. And the last one I had here, John, was around home ownership, and the help to buy shared equity scheme is expanding. So the income cap is lifted to 100,000 for singles and 160 for couples. So what are your thoughts on this home and buy scheme?
I don't know what the fascination, Mason, is around people having to buy a home. Yeah, I think that this is a political one. Like, everyone has the dream to kind of buy a home, but there's many people that I know that rent and that happy to rent. I think we need to kind of solve the whole, like, celebration of getting into $1.5 million of debt. You know, like, affordable living is the most important. They do need to help. So I figure out, like, you know, for most people to save, say, $100,000 to get a deposit is difficult, especially in the cost of living environment right now. So they do need to help. But I think what happens is, Mason, is by the economy growing well and the equal distribution of income, stopping inflation, that probably helps more than incentives to buy more property, because it just, even though it sounds good, you're inevitably just fueling the property fire more by this. And so it's a double-edged sword. Yeah, I was watching on the TV around, you know, when they bring in the smokers tax, you know, how on the cigarettes?
Yeah.
And just so people, I know it's a little bit left field, but just like previous policies and how they work, and there's always two sides to a coin. So they've put the cigarette packets up to $50, whatever, but there's a bit of like a prohibition happening in tobacco now. Like, so you could, black market, there's tobacco cigarettes that you can buy for $13, $15. And so what's happened is, not only have they, yes, from a health perspective, they tried to stop people smoking, totally get that. But if people want to smoke, They're smoking. So what they've done is they've actually lost all the revenues from tobacco smoking. So policies need to be thought out properly. Like, wouldn't it have been better? And this is what they've got now. They've got not only do they have lost the revenues, now they've got all this black market. They've got bikies now that are getting involved. There's all these like tobacco wars going on. So now they need to put more funding towards like police, gangland warfare. And so I'm just using that because it's very topical at the moment. But when you take that home ownership one, like, yes, it sounds great that you're getting more people in, but economically speaking from a property, aren't you just fueling the property prices even more?
I tend to agree. I think that's a really good example, actually. The unintended consequences that you think of everything, and then there's this something unintended you didn't think could happen, and it does, which is quite interesting. But I guess for me, John, my opinion is, if I'm going to get, like, the government's going to own some equity in the property, I'd really think about it before getting into bed with the government with your biggest asset.
Yeah.
So I personally am not the biggest fan of it. I think for some people it works really, really well. But I think for a lot of people, I think have a second thought. And I think, as you said, John, renting's not dead money as my parents and their parents drilled down into them. I don't think it's dead money anymore.
No, it's not. You have to just have another strategy.
Yeah.
And so it's when you're not making your money work and you're not doing something with it, that's where the effects are. Now, just a quick one. Obviously, Pete Dutton's come out. He's gone, yep, we're going to kind of change things and we're going to, don't worry about Labor. As we know, this is politics. One of the ones was interesting was around the fuel excise tax. Yeah, coming in and for 12 months, I think cutting it by 50% or whatever it was. So I really, to be honest with you, I like that. Yeah. And I liked it for the fact that if you compare that like with the tax cut, the 1%, you'll probably get more bang for buck. Yeah. I think you're getting maybe like, I think it was averaged out to like $18 or something per fill up. Do you get me what I mean? So it's at the end of the day, we're talking about a few dollars here and there, but I do like that. Yeah. However, to be honest with you, both parties were a bit of blah. And I'll tell you the reason why they were a bit of blah. Throughout this inflation war that's still not happened, in all of these conversations, both sides of Parliament and previously with the Parliament, Mason, where's the policies around fighting inflation?
It's interesting. It's gone a bit quiet, hasn't it? It seems to be they've gone away.
They've gone away. And the other thing is around inflation. To get rid of inflation, Mason, there needs to be tough conversations and there needs to be conversations for the betterment of the country, which are things like, no, you're not getting a tax cut. You're not getting a tax cut simply because more money in the pocket around the monopoly table means that more money's spitting in the economy, which means that inflation's going to stay ahead. Yeah? Where was the conversations when the RBA's trying to keep rates where they are? Yeah? Where's the government stepping in and saying, hey, listen, we're gonna do a 10% spending cut on what we're spending as a government. Like we help as consumers, we spend, and that's the inflation, but government spends to inflation. Yeah. And the way that it's looking at like balance sheets, yeah, and cash flows, they're spending way more than any one of us are spending. And so where was the tightening and where is the tightening even now, which is the compliments about Jim Chalmers around the debt and everything else, where's the cutbacks of their cash flows? And so that's what disappointed me. I don't see it on both sides of Parliament. One day maybe I might make it there and we'll have a bit of a chat. But hopefully that's been informative about what's going on in the budget. For all reasons, there are changes. There are things that you need to be taking into consideration. Even if they haven't been announced, it means that they may have been previously announced but remain legislated, such as the Division 296 and things like that, and also indexation on things like transfer balance caps and whatnot. But hopefully you're liking these podcasts, and if you are, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel and to all of our major platforms, and be sure to share it to your friends and family. Cheers, Mason, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you.